Welcome to the Children Who Witness Abuse webinar series from the BC Society of Transition Houses. The focus of this webinar is on working with groups, the power of many. My name is Christy Delabure O'Connor, and I'm a faculty member in the Child and Youth Care Department at Douglas College. And I've worked for many years in crisis response, adolescent mental health, and anti-violence.
And this is Elizabeth Barbeau. I'm also a faculty member at Douglas College in the Department of Child and Youth Care Counseling. My background is in early childhood education, and I've also worked for a number of years in the anti-violence field.
So this webinar is on the topic of working with groups. In this webinar, we will discuss three main topics. The first topic we will cover is the characteristics and skills of effective group leaders. The second topic will be on the ethics of running groups for children and youth. The third topic we will cover in the webinar is on the planning and running of groups. Topic 1, the group leader. Group work with children and youth can be a useful tool to help connect with and provide support to children and youth who have been exposed to violence. Our hope in this webinar is to provide newer workers with some tips on how to set up children's groups and to offer ideas that will help seasoned Children Who Witness Abuse counselors as well. To begin with, we're going to talk about some of the characteristics and skills that make for an effective group leader. This topic will have three parts. We're going to talk about the personal characteristics of effective group leaders, group leadership skills, and the value of co-leadership in running groups for children who witness abuse. Personal characteristics. We would like to begin with some thoughts about the personal characteristics that are common among good group leaders. We have drawn this list of characteristics from the textbook Groups, Process and Practice by Corey, and Corey, which was published in 2010. The first personal characteristic, the authors note, is courage. Courage is demonstrated through your willingness to be vulnerable. As a good group leader, you can admit errors and imperfections, and you're willing to take the same kinds of risks that you are asking group members to take. You are honest, direct, and open in communications even when this may involve difficult interactions. You are emotionally present and responsive to the group members. You are self-reflective about your practice and experiences in the group. The second personal characteristic of effective group leaders is having a willingness to model. This means that you are willing to do what you are asking the group members to do and to take the same kinds of risks they are taking. As a group leader, you have the opportunity to model healthy communication both between group members and yourself, and also between you and your co-facilitator if you are working with a partner. Modeling healthy communication strategies throughout the group experience helps children and youth learn through example about how to convey respect and honesty in their words and actions. As an effective group leader, you offer your presence. Presence involves much more than being physically present in your body. It also means being open to the pain, struggles, and joys of the children and youth in your group. Presence also involves maintaining healthy boundaries that allow you to demonstrate empathy without losing yourself in the details of the young person's story. You also bring caring and genuineness to your group. Your job is to help the children and youth you work with get the most that they can from the group experience. Treating all group members with respect, honoring their boundaries, and coaching them to treat each other with kindness helps to communicate an attitude of caring and genuineness. Effective group leaders bring to their work a sincere belief in the value of group work. You believe that learning from each other in a group setting can be valuable for children and youth, and that what happens in groups can be therapeutic in ways that are different from the individual support we may provide to children and youth. As an effective group leader, you also bring openness. You are willing to be open about your feelings and thoughts about the group process in ways that are appropriate. Sometimes it can be a challenge to share openly about yourself in the group while maintaining appropriate boundaries. One strategy is to focus on sharing your feelings and thoughts about what is happening in the moment. For example, let's say a child expresses sadness about recently moving schools after leaving the home they had grown up in. And while they are talking about their experience of leaving friends, the child begins to cry. You could share something like, "Jill, when you talk about how hard it is to leave your friends at your old school and try to make new friends, I think about when I had to move to Vancouver from Toronto and how sad and lonely I felt. I can see how sad you feel now, and your tears show me how much it hurts for you." This type of response allows the children in your group to know that you understand their experience and that you are paying attention to not only their words, but also their body language and nonverbal expressions to make sense of their experience in the group. Staying focused on the present helps ensure that our disclosures are made for the benefit of the group and can help us avoid sharing too much or inappropriately from our own personal stories. Anything we say during the group must be for the benefit of the group. The place for us to share reactions for our own benefits is in clinical supervision. This can sometimes be a fine line to walk. As an effective group leader, you also bring a willingness to explore and honor differences. In most communities, anti-violence workers have the opportunity to work with individuals and families from a wide variety of cultural communities. To do this work effectively, we need to realize that all of us were raised in a racist world, and each of us has a responsibility to be aware of the ways that racial bias can creep into our interactions. We need to be gently vigilant within ourselves and within our groups to ensure that our communication fosters respectful, engaged curiosity about difference rather than assumptions. You also bring with you an empathic heart. Being a good group leader means having and using a strong emotional vocabulary and the ability to be in touch with a wide range of emotions within your own life. We do not need to have experienced the same events as the children and youth in our groups in order to understand and relate to their feelings. We can draw on experiences from our own histories to know what they are feeling and use that knowledge to communicate empathy to group members. At the same time, many of us have trauma in our own past. It is important to continue working toward healing and self-awareness because this will continue to support our growth as helpers in the anti-violence field. The more we have examined and healed from our past traumas, the better equipped we are to avoid our triggers and focus on the healing work we are doing through our groups. Strong group leaders bring a sense of personal agency to their work. They are dynamic and energetic. They believe that they can make a difference in the lives of the young people they work with. Strong group leaders display confidence and at the same time are honest about their weaknesses. They do not try to hide from who they are, nor do they pretend to be someone they are not. Group work, especially with children, can be very demanding. As a group leader, you bring stamina to your work. You can support your stamina by paying attention to your energy levels and trying to keep your energy stable and consistent. Some groups work well when the facilitator occasionally takes a back seat to the conversation, allowing other members of the group to direct the flow of conversation. Co-facilitating also gives group leaders a way to manage demands on energy. When we share the responsibility for group facilitation, we get to draw upon the strength and energy of our co-facilitator and support them in a similar fashion. As with all work, and especially in this field, group leaders do best when they are able to pay attention to self-care. We need to take the time to replenish our own energy in order to be helpful to others. Taking care of our minds, bodies, and spirits is an integral part of being ready to facilitate groups. One of the goals of group work is to help members grow in their self-awareness. We do that best when we ourselves come from a place of self-awareness about our perspectives and privileges, our goals and needs, our power and strengths, and our values. The more self-aware we are, the better we are able to support others in developing this important capacity. Some people say that to work with children, you don't really need patience as much as you need a sense of humor. The ability to laugh at ourselves and to see humor in our own lives can be helpful in bringing a balanced perspective to any work, but especially in working with children. Humor and laughter can be tools for healing when employed appropriately and with the utmost respect. As a group leader, you bring your creativity to your work. Bringing a new approach to each group you run can be tough. It is common for all of us to fall back on activities or formats that we know have worked for us in the past. Sometimes this can foster feelings of boredom in us as group leaders and in group members who sense our apathy. Finding ways to bring creativity into each group you run keeps the energy alive. One way to accomplish this is to draw on the individual strengths of group members. Perhaps one of the girls in the group is a talented artist, while another is an aspiring songwriter. Tapping into these gifts will ensure that you can explore the standard curriculum of your group in new and creative ways that will produce outcomes unique to this particular mix of young people. As a dynamic group leader, you bring dedication and commitment. Doing group work is not easy. Sometimes we need to shift interpersonal challenges that can arise among group members as opportunities for learning. Sometimes groups get stuck and struggle to find a way to move forward. When things get tough, you draw on your own sense of commitment and your dedication to the work. Don't forget that you can and should lean on your clinical supervisor and your coworkers for encouragement and practical support in moving forward. In the past few slides, we have focused on the personal characteristics that can support those interested in doing group work. Now we turn our attention to some skills that group leaders can employ. Being empathic, being responsive, and communicating in ways that convey warmth are important ways to set the tone of the group. Here are some more examples of group leadership skills that can help create positive, effective groups. Active listening. Listening involves more than sitting quietly in the presence of others while they speak. To show the speaker that we are attending fully, we need to use our bodies, our facial expressions, our eyes, and our words. Active listening requires focused attention. It requires us to be fully present. It takes energy. Reflecting. Reflecting involves hearing what the speaker is saying and then, in our own words, restating what we heard. We reflect both the explicit content, what the person said, and also the implied feeling that the person may have communicated through tone, body language, or use of feeling words. Thirdly, we use summarizing. Summarizing is a key skill in facilitating groups. It allows us as group leaders to draw together the common themes we have heard from several group members. A good summary invites group members to see that they are not alone, that others have similar ideas, and that they are part of something bigger than themselves. This can help foster a sense of belonging in the group and can help normalize a child's traumatic story. Fourthly, we use facilitating. Good facilitation of a group requires focusing on communication both among group participants and between the participants and the leaders. Good facilitation often requires advanced planning of activities to ensure that time is well used and that group participants are able to move forward with their goals. The goal is to support participants in reaching their own goals. Empathizing. To convey empathy, we pay close attention to the emotional tone of the group and to the emotions of group participants. Empathizing means speaking openly about emotion and naming the emotions that group participants are describing in their stories about their experiences. This can help participants in making new meaning of their experiences. It can also help them gain new self-understanding. Questions. Good questions that are well-timed can help group participants gain self-awareness. However, it is important not to overuse questions and turn the group into an interrogation session. Open-ended questions such as, "What is happening in your body now as you are describing that day?" can help a person become more aware of their feelings in the moment. Closed questions that are not as helpful include those that search for causes of behavior or probe for information, such as, "Why are you feeling sad?" In addition to questions that focus on the individual group members, skilled group leaders are also able to use questions to help the group move forward as a whole. Questions like, "What more do we need to discuss about this topic as a group before we are ready to move forward?" Remind group members that they are part of a collective and that they can draw strength from other members in the group. Good questions can encourage group members to develop an awareness of others' needs and can role model positive communication strategies. Supporting. Supporting in the context of a group often involves simply providing a physical presence, with or without a soothing word, to bear witness to someone's story or to their emotion. If a group member is telling a difficult story or is experiencing a painful emotion, knowing that his group members are present with him and giving him their full attention can provide him with the support he needs. Blocking. Sometimes group leaders need to interrupt behaviors from participants that are counterproductive to the group experience. Examples include intruding on someone's privacy, breaking confidence, or gossiping. These kinds of behaviors must be directly addressed by the group leader, but not in a way that punishes or shames the speaker. Instead, these incidents can be used as teaching opportunities. For example, the group can have a conversation reflecting on the importance of keeping confidences, or as a group, they can brainstorm ways to talk about their own experiences without breaking another's confidence. If a member talks about someone else in the room, the leader can ask the person to speak directly to the person being spoken about. Assessing. Group leaders must assess the extent to which each member of the group is benefiting from being part of the group. Assessment means noticing whether there are ways to improve the content or the format of the group for everyone. It also means noticing whether an individual is best served by being in this group, or whether that person requires individual support or referral to a different service or resource. This assessment is ongoing and requires us to pay attention to the ways in which group members participate in activities and discussions. Modeling. A great way for group leaders to teach certain kinds of skills is through modeling. and co-facilitation can definitely help us to do this. When we have the opportunity to work with a co-facilitator, we can model healthy, positive communication for group members and invite them to communicate with us in ways that follow this model. Evaluating. In order for us to keep our groups effective and positive, we need to be prepared to evaluate our activities after each meeting. Where assessment focuses on how the participants are doing, evaluation focuses on how the group activities have done. Asking participants to briefly evaluate their experience after each session gives us information about how well we are meeting their expectations. We can put this together with our knowledge of our goals for each group and make ongoing decisions about how to improve each session and how to plan for future groups. Ending the group. Planning for the end of a group begins with the very first session. It's important for both the leader and the participants to be aware of the time-limited nature of the group, the flow from one session to the next, and the fact that the natural ending of the group will arrive at a predictable time. Preparing group members not only for the ending of each session, but also the ending of the overall group experience is an important component of group work. Many of us struggle with transitions and losses, particularly children who have lived with trauma. We can help group participants anticipate the ending of the group so that it feels like a culmination rather than a loss. For more detail on topics related to communication, you can check out the webinar in this series entitled Listening Skills. We now move to a discussion of co-leadership. Co-leading a group provides great opportunities for collaboration and support. It also allows us to role model healthy, respectful communication for the folks we work with. In anti-violence groups for children and adolescents, having the opportunity to have a female-male co-leadership partnership can provide new awareness of how men and women can work together in ways that are respectful, safe, and nonviolent. We recognize that for some children who witness abuse counselors, there is not the option of co-facilitating with someone else. If that is your situation, we invite you to listen to this section with the idea of preparing yourself with good reasons why you should ideally be working with a co-facilitator. Here are some advantages of running groups together with a colleague. Reduced burnout. Working with a partner means that you share the load, both in preparing a group and in taking the lead during group activities. With a co-leader, you know that someone else in the group is there to back you up. Sharing the task of facilitation. In a psychoeducational group, it is common for participants to process difficult emotions during group activities. With two group leaders, one can focus on the content of the group and moving the agenda forward, while the other can focus on monitoring the emotions of participants. This allows the second leader to provide specific support or feedback to a participant who is experiencing a strong emotion, or gently nudge the conversation in a new direction if that is what is best for the group. The third advantage of co-leadership is continuity. With two leaders, the group can continue to meet even if one of the leaders needs to be absent due to illness or for other reasons. This ensures that the children and youth can continue to attend group without putting pressure on the sole facilitator to come to work when she is not able to do so. Peer supervision and support. Co-facilitation naturally feeds peer supervision and support. With both of you present in the group, you can debrief what occurred and make meaning without needing to recount the session to a supervisor who wasn't present in the group. Safety is another advantage of co-leadership. Safety, both for the co-leaders and the group, is increased when we use a model of co-facilitation. If a group member's comments or behaviors are triggering for one of the leaders, or if a child or youth attempts to engage one of the leaders inappropriately, the co-leader can help diffuse the situation and shift the dynamic. Similarly, if a group member's behavior escalates to a point where the group's safety is compromised, having a co-leader in the room can support de-escalation, call for outside assistance if required, and/or ensure a safe exit from the room for group participants and leaders. Increased diversity is another advantage. Having two group leaders invites group members to connect with the leader that presents the best fit for them. Not all group participants are able to connect with every group leader. By using a co-leadership model, we increase the opportunities for participants to make a positive connection with a leader, thus increasing the likelihood they will continue to attend a group and benefit from the program. Good co-leadership involves trust, open communication, respect for differences in styles and personalities, and a valuing of each other's skills and competence. Co-leaders need to plan together, work together within the group, and debrief their experiences together in order to ensure a positive working relationship. At this point in the webinar, you may want to pause as you consider the following questions based on the information we have covered so far. We invite you to make notes for yourself that will help you engage in conversations with your coworkers about your ideas. Here are the questions for reflection so far. Number 1, what are some personal strengths that you have that can support you in your work as a group facilitator? What challenges do you envision? Who on your agency team might be a good co-facilitator for you based on these challenges? Number 2, what skills would you like to acquire or refine to assist you as a group facilitator? What resources are available to you to assist you in acquiring these skills? For example, local workshops, online courses, or mentors. And number 3, what do you see as the primary advantage of co-facilitating in your program? What do you see as a potential downside to co-facilitation, and how might you turn that potential negative into a positive aspect of co-facilitation? When you are ready to go ahead, you can push play and join us on the next slide for topic 2.
Topic 2, ethical considerations. The ethical considerations of group work are vast, and a detailed review of the topics related to ethics is beyond the scope of this webinar. We suggest that if you are implementing group work within your program for the first time, that you enroll in the web-based courses for children who witness abuse counselors offered by the BC Society of Transition Houses. These courses can be accessed through the BC STH website. In this webinar, we will provide a brief overview of key topics related to the ethics of group work. We will talk about consent, confidentiality, and diversity awareness. The first ethical issue we'll discuss is consent. Children who witness abuse programs are voluntary, meaning that all participants must consent to take part in the service. To consent to service, 2 things must be true. First, participants must be fully informed about the service they're consenting to. Second, participants must be legally able to consent to the service. Children who witness abuse counselors are required to ensure that both of these elements are present. Informed consent. Children who witness abuse counselors have a duty to ensure that both the child and the referring parent understand enough about the program to provide fully informed consent. To ensure this is the case, there are a number of things that a group facilitator should do. She should describe herself, her training, and her experience to the participants. She should explain the purpose of the program, the way that it's offered, and the limits of what the program can offer. She should explain the hours of the program, expectations, any cancellation or absence policy, any guidelines about contact or behavior outside of meetings. She should explain what might happen if the child misses several sessions and explain how long the program is expected to last. She should explain the confidentiality policy, including the limits of confidentiality, specifically the duty to report child protection concerns, concerns that a participant may harm himself or someone else, and the requirement to respond to a subpoena. She should describe the kind of information a counselor might share with a clinical supervisor or with others in the agency. She should also explain what records will be kept and why. She should make sure that each participant and their parent understand the complaint policy and specifically tell the child and the parent who they can speak with if they wish to make a complaint. And finally, if the family is also involved with the Ministry of Children and Family Development, she should explain the counselor's relationship with the ministry's social worker and what kind of information or reports might be shared. A good way to do this is to prepare a written description of the program and sit down with the parent and child to talk it through before the first group. The family can take the written description away with them and discuss it, if they have any questions after the initial conversation. Legal capacity to consent. In order to consent to services, participants must have the legal capacity to do so. In British Columbia, the Age of Majority Act states that an individual who is 19 years or older can make decisions affecting her welfare. When working with children under 19, a group facilitator normally obtains the legal consent of the non-abusive parent. While the parent provides legal consent for service, it is also ethically important for the child to consent to the service, to the extent that the child understands and is able to. In British Columbia, according to the Infants Act, an individual who is under the age of 19 is also capable of consenting to health care, including support and counseling services, if two conditions are both true. First, the service provider must be satisfied that the child understands the nature and consequences and the benefits and risks of a particular plan of care. And the service provider must believe that this plan of care is in the child's best interest. Under the Infants Act, the counselor should also ensure that the consent is voluntary and not the result of undue pressure. Technically, anyone under the age of 19, even someone as young as 10 years of age, can consent to health care or to counseling services according to the Infants Act, if that child has the ability to understand and to make that decision. In practice, however, most service providers in the province use 12 years of age as a benchmark to help determine whether a child has the legal capacity to consent. Confidentiality. One of the key conditions for effective group work is confidentiality. Part of our work as group leaders involves explaining confidentiality to group members in developmentally appropriate ways, particularly if we're working with children and adolescents. Group members need to be made aware of the limits of confidentiality. For example, if they speak about harming themselves or others, we need to share that information with folks who can provide assistance and guidance. When working with children and youth, it's very important to clarify what information you will share with the parent. You should do this before the group begins and ensure that both the young person and the parent understand. In most cases, you will not share the content of group discussions with a parent unless you have the permission of the child. It's important for parents and children to have a clear understanding of this policy prior to the beginning of the group in order to avoid misunderstandings down the road. As the group leader, you can model confidentiality by ensuring that you only discuss details from within the group with a peer or clinical supervisor. Walking through some ways that people mistakenly break confidentiality is also a useful tool in explaining how to keep the information shared within the group confidential. It can be helpful to remind group members that ultimately they are in control of what and how much information they share within the group. This invites group members to be intentional about what things they choose to talk about. Duty to report. It is not a breach of confidentiality for you to obey the law around your duty to report certain concerns. The law requires you to disclose information if, number one, you believe a child is in danger, number two, someone tells you they intend to harm themselves or another person, or number three, a judge orders you to appear in court or to hand over a client record. You must make a report to the Ministry of Children and Family Development if you have reason to suspect that a child is being abused, neglected, or otherwise maltreated. It is not your responsibility to determine whether this child needs protection. Your responsibility is to make the report so that a qualified child welfare worker can determine whether the child is safe. You should discuss with your agency what the protocols are around child protection reporting in your program. You can make a child protection report to your local MCFD office, or if the child is Aboriginal, to your delegated Aboriginal Child and Family Service Agency, if there is one in your community. If it is after business hours, or you are not sure who to call, you can always phone the Helpline for Children at any time of the day or night. That number is 310-1234. You do not need an area code, and the call is free from anywhere in BC. If a child is in immediate danger, call 911. While you do have a legal responsibility to report child protection concerns, this is a sensitive situation. It's important to let parents and children know at the start of service about this legal requirement so that they do not feel betrayed if you're forced to make a report. Also, if you find that you are forced to make a child protection report, there are ways to do this that can lessen the impact on your relationship with the child and with the child's mother. You should investigate the protocol at your agency and determine how your agency directs you to handle this situation. MCFD has a free resource to support community agencies in responding to child protection concerns. It is called the BC Handbook for Action on Child Abuse and Neglect, and it's available for download. To find this resource, you can Google the title, or you can go to the URL, which is provided on the reference page at the end of this webinar. Diversity awareness. Children Who Witness Abuse programs work from a feminist understanding of gender relations and the use of power to control women in relationships. From a feminist perspective, we see that individual women's experiences occur within the context of a patriarchal system. This feminist perspective informs our work with children and youth in the groups that we run. Women of color and other marginalized women have consistently challenged feminists to see gender as one system of oppression among many. In order for us to work authentically for justice, we must see the ways in which women's other identities, such as race, sexual orientation, class background, immigration status, etc., overlap with and shape their experiences as women. To adopt a feminist perspective, therefore, requires an understanding of more than simply gender oppression. It requires us to recognize the many identities we all live with. It requires us to see how privilege and oppression affect each of our identities. The groups that we run bring together children and youth from diverse backgrounds, and we invite them to learn with and from each other. As group leaders, we need to be aware of our own power relationships, including cultural, gender, sexual, socioeconomic, etc., and how these power relationships influence our perspectives, our values, and our assumptions. The more we can increase our awareness of these issues, including our self-awareness, the better we will be equipped to facilitate discussions of difference within our groups. To become the best leaders we can be, we need to continue to increase our awareness of how racism, colonialism, sexism, homophobia, and other forms of oppression affect the people we live with and work among. For example, there are ways that our administrative procedures for joining a group may inadvertently create barriers for some families. Are there ways that communication within the group inadvertently silences some participants? Some types of marginalization are more visible than others. If a group participant is a member of an invisible minority, for example, due to an invisible disability or their sexual orientation or their gender identity, do we assume that they're part of the mainstream? We need to become increasingly aware of resources within our communities that can assist us in becoming more responsive to the needs of all members of our communities. This may mean, for example, integrating traditional knowledge from Indigenous communities into our group plans, bringing in guests and or consulting with experts to help us bridge gaps in our knowledge. We need to become better and better at facilitating respectful discussion among group members. Our goal is to highlight compassion and understanding as the center points in our exploration of differences in values and beliefs. At this point, we again invite you to pause the webinar as you consider the following questions based on the information we've covered so far. Make notes for yourself that will help you engage in conversations with your coworkers about your ideas. When you're ready, you can go ahead and resume the webinar. Here are those reflection questions. Number 1, what are your agency's practices around confidentiality and consent? Number 2, how do your brochures and other materials address diversity? Are there ways that you could update these documents to best reflect your program's values? Number 3, how would you deal with a breach of confidentiality in a group of adolescents? For example, let's say it came to your attention that several group members have been discussing another group member's story at school. How would you address this within the group? Number 4, here's another example. You are running a group for 7 to 11-year-old children. A parent approaches you and says she needs you to share whether her child talked about a family gathering they attended on the weekend. How do you respond? What support might you seek in making your decision? When you're ready to rejoin the webinar, you can restart it and we'll see you on the next slide.
Topic 3, planning a group. In this third topic, we will talk about some things we should keep in mind when planning groups. Let's spend a bit of time considering how to put together a group. Then we will talk about how to help participants anticipate the end of a group. Considerations for forming a group. Forming a group requires us to consider several practical considerations, such as the purpose of the group size, frequency of meetings, number of sessions or meetings, the location of the meetings, whether you'll use a single facilitator or a co-leadership model, and open versus closed membership. Many children who witness abuse programs offer groups for children and adolescents already. Some of you may be considering different approaches to groups. For example, you may want to create a social action or social justice group for youth in your community to help educate and create a community action plan about safer communities. Whether the group you want to run is more psychoeducational in focus or is about community action and advocacy, you will need to consider the purpose and the composition of the group. In children who witness abuse programs, group facilitators assist children to problem-solve safety issues, break the silence by sharing their experiences and feelings, learn to identify and name different forms of abuse, learn about nonviolent ways to resolve conflict, and learn non-abusive ways to express anger and other feelings. In children who witness abuse programs, most groups for younger children last for 10 sessions, while those for adolescents usually run for 8 sessions, each with one group meeting per week. The length of each session varies according to the developmental level of the children. Groups for preschoolers might last 45 minutes to an hour, for example. Those for young school-age children might be between 1 and 1.5 hours, and adolescent groups may be up to 2 hours long. Groups should be warm, safe environments where children can enjoy themselves and each other while talking about their experience. Children who witness abuse counselors typically group children by age, often within a range of 2 to 3 years. Groups usually work best with between 6 to 8 participants. Ideally, the group should be co-facilitated by a male and female counselor in order to model appropriate, respectful behavior between men and women. One of the issues to consider is whether you will have open membership model, meaning group members can join the group at any time, or whether you will run a series of group sessions with a closed group, meaning that members join at the beginning and remain through the series with no new members joining midway. The issue of group membership really depends on the focus of your group. If you are facilitating a Children Who Witness Abuse anti-violence group, closed membership is best. However, if you are creating a safe spaces group with the local high school and your goal for the group is to have members create a social action plan for increasing safety within the school, open membership may be a workable model. From this example, you can see that all of the decisions we make about how a group will run are tied to each other, and most specifically, tied to the purpose of the group.
Endings. The way a group ends is at least as important as how it begins. In the initial phases of a group, participants are getting acquainted, developing trust, learning how they will communicate with each other, and developing the unique identity of this group. The final stages of a group give participants an opportunity to prepare to say goodbye to each other and to the group experience, to review what they have learned and how they have grown, and to consider how they will bring this new learning forward into their daily lives. Preparing for the end of the group should begin with the first session. Towards the end of the group, members should have an opportunity to express what the group has meant to them and state where they intend to go from here. For many of us, children, youth, and also adults, endings are difficult. We realize that time with the group is limited, but it can be difficult to face the reality of ending our relationship with the group and saying goodbye. This is particularly true for trauma survivors, children and youth who lack secure attachment, and anyone who has survived painful, abrupt, or repeated fractures in relationships. In a closed group, Leaders can help group participants review their own experience with the group. It can be particularly helpful to allow each participant to offer a reflection on what he himself has learned or how he has grown. It may also be appropriate to invite participants to give feedback to each other on changes they have observed. In an open group, the challenges are different because participants will be joining and leaving the group at different times. It can be helpful for group members to agree that they will give each other notice before leaving the group so that the one leaving can prepare emotionally for the ending and so that others can have a chance to say goodbye. When a member must leave without prior notice, the leader can encourage that participant to spend time on their own thinking about what the group has meant to them and what they will do with their learning. It's equally important to allow time within the group to acknowledge the loss of the group member and to process any feelings that arise. Goodbyes can also be framed as celebrations of achievement, like graduations. Participants can be congratulated, certificates of achievement can be issued, and celebratory food can be shared. It is important to set aside time at the end of a group for all participants to discuss things like what they have learned from the group, what they liked, and what was difficult for them. Leaders can help by encouraging participants to be concrete in their statements. For example, if a teen says, "This group has been fantastic, I really grew a lot," we might ask her questions such as, "How has this group been important to you? In what specific ways was it fantastic? What are a few things you've learned that you will most want to remember? When you say you've grown a lot, what are some changes in yourself that you've noticed?" By asking participants to be specific about what they've learned, we help them to think about what they want to do with this increased knowledge. If a participant can put her experiences into concrete terms, she's more likely to be able to translate what she has learned into daily living situations. These examples relate to teens and older children. When you work with younger children, you will have to adapt your language and expectations to their developmental level, asking questions such as, "What was your favorite thing about this group? Did you try anything new? Have you learned any new ideas? Have you learned any new skills? Have you learned anything new about yourself?" Your group has been successful when participants leave it having changed in some positive way. They may have acquired new knowledge, new skills, new awareness, or new ways of being in the world. One of the important tasks in the final phase of a group is helping participants consider how they will carry their new learning forward into their everyday life. One strategy for helping group participants think about how they have changed is to ask them to imagine themselves in the future. A leader can ask participants, for example, what changes they would like to see in themselves 6 months from now, or 1 year, or 5 years into the future. Imagine this group of us meets again in this same room 1 year from now. Think about your life at that future time. What do you hope you'll be telling us about yourself? What do you need to practice doing between now and then to accomplish the change that you're hoping for? Sometimes participants will choose to commit to specific homework. For example, "I will practice speaking my mind clearly at least once a day," or "I will practice asking for help with something at least once a week." Finally, you will want to consider at this point what further resources you can suggest for members of your group. It's important to allow people to leave the group with a sense of what they can do next to support their healing. Will you be running another group that they could join? What other resources in the community are available for them? For more ideas on specific activities you can use in your group, please see the list of references provided on the reference page at the end of this webinar. point, you may once again choose to pause the webinar as you consider the following questions based on the information we've covered. Make notes for yourself that will help you engage in conversations with your coworkers about your ideas. And when you're ready, you can resume the webinar. Here are the reflection questions. Number 1, what types of groups are you interested in facilitating? Who within your agency or community could assist you in creating a proposal and plan for this group? Number 2, if groups are already running within your agency, what things do you think you could do to help improve them? What resources would help you do this, and how could you access them? Number 3, what is your current practice in evaluating the success of groups or activities that you run? How do you know whether your groups or activities are achieving the goals you set? Whom do you gather your feedback from, and how often? Are there ways that you could improve your internal practices here?
So we have come to the end of our webinar on working with groups. On this slide, you will see the list of resources that we accessed in the creation of this material, including the reference by Priestley, The Leader's Guide, Group Games for Fun. This is a free online resource that you can download for yourself to help you plan group activities with children and youth. Thank you for spending the time with us in this webinar. We hope it has been useful for you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.